Right. Good morning, everyone. If I can ask the subcommittee members to turn on their cameras and say hello. We do have a quorum of subcommittee members here. I know James Franco will be out. He's under the weather. He did share some stuff with Augustine, so hopefully we have some to discuss. I know Rachel is going to be here. I got an email from her earlier this morning. um, but not 100% sure where she's at the moment. But we have a quorum of members here. We have James, Saguna, and Augustine, so we can go ahead and get started.
Cool. Do we have to do like a roll call or anything? No, right?
There's three here. You all have your cameras on. I think
Cool.
that counts as
Awesome. That works. Cool. Um, so yeah, thank you to everybody. I mean, I got stuff from everybody. Thank you very much. I didn't get a chance to compile it into one document just yet, but I will do that and send it to everybody. But I wanted to share what Rachel sent. Let me see if I can share the screen.
Yeah. If you can't, let me know.
I think I can. Sorry, I'm a Teams guy, so Zoom I have to
I know.
relearn every
Yeah, me
time.
too.
Sorry.
Every time. We've used it for ELTAC, and that's about the extent of
Yeah.
its use. So
Okay. Cool. There we go.
okay, perfect.
Um, so yeah, in the last meeting, I think we had talked about that the tiers, the risk tiers is kind of what we wanted to work on, and I got information and comments from everybody on that, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Um, Everybody kind of was very similar. I think similar to what we talked about, so I think everybody's on the same page, which is great. The only one that was a little bit different was this what Rachel sent. So we talked about setting a three-tier system because it's easy, right? Low, medium, and high. I think that the risk levels is just easier to define. But she came up with this kind of concept. I'm not sure where it came from, so I have to ask her. But it seemed pretty useful, and it kind of took a lot of the stuff that we had talked about, but made it a matrix. So not a strict three-tier system, but a matrix to kind of determine the risk or severity, I guess. Um, which I think is kind of nice. And I again I want to talk about it and ask if it's something that is worth doing, if it adds a lot of complexity, maybe not worth it, because we want to make this tool and this language easy to follow, easy to digest. But how she describes is that it's a matrix that relies on two different metrics, right? One is the severity, and then one is the reliance. So gives five levels, five tiers of everything, so that if it's negligible in severity, it has no. Sorry, can you guys see this? Is this too small? Maybe we'll do it like that. Um, if there's no severity, like if something bad happens, um, what is the deal? Like if it goes wrong, if it makes a mistake, if it does something weird, and it has no effect, right? Then it's not a big deal. But if it's on the other side, if it's something that if it goes wrong, it could lead to, bad data coming out, false data, hallucinations, whatever, then it's very critical. So it kind of has a scale here of severity of the impact. Again, assuming it would go wrong. So worst case scenario kind of thing. And then inside of the matrix, we also look at the reliance. Like if it's something that you're using it infrequently, um, not a big deal, right? If it's something that you use to check your grammar or to, you know, schedule things, not as critical as something that's kind of automated that acts as an agent that does all the work and essentially omits the human aspect. So if it's something that, goes quantitates a peak, integrates a peak, quantitates against a curve, makes interpretation, publishes it to some repository and pushes it out to the world without human intervention, that is obviously, a lot more reliance and more risk. Um, so then the idea would be that you take, kind of both of these, you define the use and you take the severity, you assess the number here, and you take the reliance, assess the number here, and then you apply that to this risk matrix, right? So your, severe on one side, reliance on the other side, multiply them together and see what you got, right? If it's critical, like if it goes wrong, it's absolutely horrible situation. And you're doing it in an automated fashion, then that's 5 on both, gives you the most critical kind of risk. And this kind of gives a little bit more nuance to the application of the tool or whatever you're doing, which I don't know. It to me it seems like it's cool. I think it's useful. I think it gives a little bit more granularity. What I wanted to ask is what you guys thought about doing this type of approach. And then, of course, setting levels like, hey, these are the things that high risk, low risk, medium risk, and then whatever goes on beyond that for the vetting or evaluation or validation. But in terms of evaluating the tiers, do you guys like this type of matrix, or is this too complicated for most users?
All right, I'm confirming with Rachel. She's, I think, joining the last meeting's invite, which
Oh, okay.
fixed because we have the invite link. But I like this kind of tier. It's like, yes, it's more complicated, but it gets at some of the things that we were talking about last meeting, where we weren't. There we go. Where we weren't quite all in perfect alignment with what each tier had, because it was getting a little fuzzy in the medium risk, where we were talking about data import versus data export. I summarize it poorly, but I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what everyone else thinks.
I think it's great. I mean, it's detailed. It's kind of similar to what I had done, but it's much more detailed, and I think it fine tunes it a lot more. So I think it's great.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of overlap with what James, what you sent, what John Frankel sent, what Susan sent. Like there was a lot of overlap in this stuff. But I think the form. Oh, hi Rachel, I see you joined. I think this approach is great. I think it really could. We just put all the other details and comments that everybody else put in to this type of approach, and it really does a good job of assessing this. Sorry, I ran through your what you sent, Rachel. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to it. I thought it was great. It was very cool.
And obviously needs fine tuning, but this is just very basically based on what the FDA CGMP is for any sort of quality issues or data integrity issues. So I just felt it was a nice way to sort of quantify it.
Do they use the 5 tiers as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know we were discussing possibly 3 tiers in the last one, because 3 is often a little bit easier to wrap your head around, like what's the difference between minor and moderate, right? So, I mean, I could see us condensing it down to be not necessarily perfect square, but more of a 3 by 5.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be. We have to, this is something where I just really almost one for one adapted it, but it's something where, because our industry is different, we need to sort of be able to massage it a bit.
Yeah, I think that the categories and the applications and the examples we'd want to fine tune, but this matrix, like for risk assessment, I think is great, and I agree. I think I to Chris's point, I think the 3 tiers is easier because it's only 3, but we could also make it this part 3, right? We can use still this type of assessment to get a little more granularity in the test and see what needs vetting, but then when you look at the overall, maybe just condense that to 3 and do it that way, or something similar to kind of adapt it. But I think the approach is pretty good to me.
Yeah, I see this as more of like a stepping stone for getting it into a smaller bucket, right?
Yeah. And then the bucket at the end where we do the assessment, I think we can, if you guys agree, we can just do 3 to make it a little bit easier. I just feel like to me 3 makes it so that it's always like the highest risk is always bad or always, under scrutiny. Where 5's like, do we give it a lot of scrutiny with 3, with 4 or 5? Is 5 really the bad one? Is 4 kind of bad? So I'd like to just say yes, everything, maybe we condense 1 and 2 into the low risk, 3 stays, and then 4 and 5 condense to high risk and just do it that way. Just to make it a little bit easier. Again, I want to make it not cumbersome for folks.
It seems like anything that even measures a 5 would pretty much be don't use this
Yeah.
product. This or this. Like it's not like put it on the back burner. It's like let's not use it.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, that's actually a good point. Yeah, we can set it that way. Have the 3 tiers, and then this is just prohibited, just straight up. Yeah, don't do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say have the 4th tier of like just don't do it.
Yeah.
I guess you could have 5 as 0 being this really isn't AI. Like,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
do we care?
Yeah.
Well, and the way I was thinking too is that, for example, there is an AI tool that makes QR codes. There that is like almost 0 risk for anything.
Yeah.
You're not really giving it very much information, just a link that's available. But you still have to vet it a tiny bit because you don't want to, you want to have rules around don't link it to something internal, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. You could have the 0th tier be the no need to do the validation or any of that stuff. And yeah, I like it. I think it's good. And then we keep the middle 3 tiers as the assessment tiers.
I see that one as almost like it always requires validation, right? Because you generate the QR code and immediately scan it, and you're like, oh, it doesn't point to where I thought it would point to. It doesn't work, right? So in either case, it's like I see it as a 0 tier because it's also like it's part of the use case for it, right? Every step always is going to require human validation to make sure it works. So maybe we do want 5 tiers, but they'd be 0 through prohibited.
I mean, I'll tell you from like in a CGMP, having been in pharma, I mean, the 5th tier is basically like you watch someone walk in and like dump poison in your, it's like so obviously bad that it doesn't need any thought around it. And the lowest tier is just like, somebody document that somewhere and let's just move on. So it's kind of like, the real functional tiers are the 3 middle tiers, if you really come down to it. So there is ways that we could probably even simplify it where the top is just like, don't do, the bottom is don't worry about it, and the middle is where you actually have to spend some time.
Yeah, I think that's good. I like that.
Yeah, we had in our last meeting, we talked about one of those confirm musts. It always has to be in the annual ethics training of like what your AI can and can't do, and you need a policy for when you can and can't use it. And that would cover everything that's in your tier 0, right? Of no risk, or low risk, right? Okay, so thinking of this framework, then, do we want to walk through everything else that everyone has shared so that way we can collect everything and post all of the documents for folks to review afterwards?
Yes. So let me see if I can bring these up. I have a very similar approach from James here. So I copied this into a Word document to make it easier to keep track of everything. But similar kind of approach, I think, with examples and risk tiers. Really, everybody was pretty much in the same page as to what we discussed. So I'll consolidate this. This is from James, and this is from Luna. I don't know if you wanted to talk about this one, that you gave a lot of examples and like risk level specifics, which is great. So I was going to incorporate this into the one kind of document that Rachel put together and make it all together and distribute to everybody. So I don't know if you want to talk about yours.
I liked Rachel's idea. Just that I also liked Chris's input. Instead of going from 1 through 5, I like the 0 and the 4. So the active working tiers are 2 to 3. But basically, I think all those 5 were condensed into 3 here. So high risk is most of the time I had to say use of AI is prohibited, and most of it were related to interpretations, right? Um, but I definitely like on the low risk end, the 0 that they were discussing about. Yeah, don't worry about it. And 1 where it needs a kind of minimum level of cross checking and reviewing. But if you could move to the top part of the screen?
Oops.
What I like though is figuring out where the activity comes in this chain, to say, does it require to define which category the activity will belong to? Meaning, if it is in this chain, right from receiving the sample through reporting pipeline, what I thought in my mind was the closer it was to this, the more human intervention becomes necessary in terms of checking it, and the further away, the lower the risk for it, and then it can go under categories of 1 and 2. But in terms of the 4 pillars that you were talking about, I was trying to put that into some form of, this document is a mix of, like, the notes that the way I understood it, as well as how to put it, present it into converted into a policy format. That was my approach in the whole process.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I think it really is the next step that we need. But the moving the risk tiers into the pillars that we talked about, I think is going to be the next step. So this is great. And there's a lot of, I think, overlap with the activities and the risk levels that you put in with what we talked about and what James and John Franco put together. So I think this is perfect.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking the more clearly we define the activity for those 0 to 4 levels, the more easier it is going to be when we move to the training phase of what belongs where.
Yeah. And I do want to make them also be examples and not like requirements. So that's why I wanted to also make sure that when we write this and put together, it mimics kind of what how TNI structured, where these are suggestions, like these are suggested categories of activities that would fall in these tiers, but not hard and fast. Like if you are doing something that it's listed as a medium risk, but you have safeguards in place or whatever other things to make it low risk, we can, categorize it. So I would like to keep them as examples and not like these are the rules. If you're doing this task, it has to be high risk or medium risk or low risk or whatever.
Yeah, and this is a note from the way they're restructuring the future TNI standard whenever that's done, who knows. Maybe folks going next week to Houston will have a better idea of what they're doing. But they're doing, the standard is just like the type of activity, so it like describes what it is, and then they have an appendix that's like, hey, you remember those things we were talking about? Here's actual activities that somebody would do and where they would fall into that thing as like an appendix and an example, rather than like a hard, every time you do this specific thing, this is what category it falls in. I mean, I'm sure there's a couple of those that we'll want to keep in, of like, anytime you do this thing, it's definitely high risk, but otherwise we can stick to like broad categories. Like I like here, Saguna has like high risk generation, alteration, or interpretation of reportable data. That's the kind of thing that we'd want in one document. And then the list, like she has here, of like activity and required control, that would be like, say, appendix, where it'd be like, here's an example of this type of activity. Sorry, Rachel, I cut you off.
Oh no, I was just sorry. My computer's being a little weird today, and it's going on and off mute. So this has been happening in other meetings.
Okay.
It's not doesn't necessarily mean I'm always going to talk. So apologize. I'll do my best to raise my hand if I can. Yeah, I think that just to go with that, going with the risk-based approach. And if the future TNI examples aren't available to everybody, ISO has been doing this now for about a decade, where as opposed to being strictly prescriptive, which everyone can find ways around that, or you'll get into situations that aren't covered by the prescription. So then that causes a lot of consternation and confusion. It'll go towards more the risk of this and then examples.
Yeah, I think it's a good approach. So for next, since we agree kind of on these risks and the matrix approach, and I'll put all this together and send it to the group, what should we pursue next? But I thought that we could maybe try to incorporate the framework pillars of the, like what Buna listed, but we talked about last time, the auditability, data sovereignty, reproducibility, and then the retention and use. Should we try to incorporate these pillars into the risk levels, so we can start putting together some language, or what do you think would be the next steps for something like this? That's my thought, at least.
I agree. I think that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
maybe.
thinking we have like every time an activity is done, this is my understanding. Every time an activity is done, that activity is compared against the 4 pillars, and then it moves to it gets a score, and then the table that you were showing about regarding there was this. Could you could we have that on the screen? So yeah, so then we give it a score, and depending on the risk, that's where it goes into the different level, depending upon the total score that activity receives based on the 4 pillars.
Yeah, I
That's
like it.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
So-
so
so-
here the pillars would be one of either the row or the column. Functionally, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah,
Have the four columns there, and then we'd have a separate column that would be like how critical that activity is.
I think so. They have the severity of. I think I like the approach of like consequences, right? So the criticality of an activity, I'd stay away from, because we have every activity we do in the lab is critical, right? Everything is super important, from making sure that the refrigerator is at temperature to calibration standards are current. But I would do from the perspective of risk if it goes bad. So like the consequences of a failure, kind of worst case scenario, so that we can better assess, the severity, I guess. I think the critical process is going to depend a lot on who's asking, right? To one person, their task is going to be way more critical than somebody else's. So maybe the severities or the consequences would be a better approach.
I like that. So that'd be like zeros. If it messes up, nothing bad happens at all.
Yeah,
Like you
inconsequential.
like punctuation mistake, right?
Yeah.
Who cares, right?
Yeah.
So that would be a 0, and then you'd evaluate that against each pillar, right?
I think so. I think that's how I would structure it. If that makes sense.
And if it's used as a tool, then it's because everybody's lab is going to be different.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
once something, like you mentioned, something that's a big deal for one place might be easy peasy for somebody else, so if it's used as a tool, then everybody kind of plugs in what's applicable to them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great to have a document that, like a framework or whatnot, kind of a summary of the tool. But a tool itself to make the determination, kind of like 2 separate documents.
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm explaining that right. you got your spreadsheets for determining MDLs, but you've got a SOP on how to, how to do them. Something similar to that.
Yeah, I agree. I think having that other document on how to make the determination, how to make the interpretations, yeah, this is how you assess risk, and then the framework for calculating that would be, yeah, makes sense.
So it's slightly different than what we have here, then, right? Because this one is like you're scoring each 1 to 5.
I think it would be in addition to this. I'd imagine where you'd have like something that describes how to score them, and then this to do the scoring, I guess.
Just to understand the scoring, and that would be the guidance on how to score it, what score to give for each one.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can make a score of 0 because it doesn't apply to you don't have to go 1. You can.
Yeah, that's where we're saying
0.
0 to 4.
Yeah.
4 being
Well, not just the tiers, but also the scoring could be at 0.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like on assigning these scores would be, yeah.
So understanding this, the score is going to be from 0 to 5, but the risk tiers is going to be from 0 to 4.
Yes, or maybe we keep it as 1 to 5 to not add another one, and just 1 is the minimal, no effort, no whatever, like a 0 would be. And then when we do the final scoring, the tiers for applicability would be tier 0. I mean, call it tier 1. That's maybe easier, 1 to 5 to keep everything consistent. But we'll say tier 1 requires no extra anything. You could just go ahead and use it, document it if you need to, but it doesn't require vetting or validation or anything. Tiers 2, 3, and 4 would be, different levels of severity if it goes wrong, of complexity, of, validation and checking and whatever the other pillars would be that we have to apply against. And then the last tier 5 would be just don't do it, straight up, not permitted. And then do it that way. So we keep everything 1 to 5 and just have clear instructions on what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. Does that kind of make sense to do it that way?
That sounds good. My only concern is I don't want it to be a little confusing. So the tiers instead of scores, can we use like name it a certain way?
Sure. Yeah.
So that way there's no like kind of misunderstanding or overlap.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like, it's a 5 here, but a 3 on the other one. Yeah. Yeah. We can color code them or name them, or yeah. I'll come up with something, and when I send this out to the group, we'll have some options there. But I like the idea to have a clear differentiation between this betting level and permissibility versus the scoring rules that we'd have up here with the severity and the reliance.
Yeah, and we'd want some community feedback on whatever formula we have.
Yeah.
Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Because we don't want it to be confusing. Straight math is easy, but once you start putting in 4 different things, and go ahead, Sergi.
Hello, everyone. Just joining, and I've been listening to the conversation. So, I mean, first of all, just want to thank you, everyone, for bringing this topic to the surface and having the conversation around, this really, really important aspect that is going to impact labs, starting to impact the labs, and will continue in the foreseeable future. So, as I was listening into the discussion about the risk assessment and the risk matrix. So I was wondering if, the scoring that we're talking about with the risk score, whether there will be consideration in terms of likelihood and impact, and the score being a multiplier of the likelihood and the impact. So if we're looking at it from that lens, then maybe consider is at a simple multiplier going from a scale of 1 to 5 rather than putting a 0 in there. If you want to do it purely mathematical, and then based on the risk score, end up with either low, medium, high, or critical risk, those kind of categories. So just from the risk assessment standpoint, whether you would want to consider likelihood and impact as the two factors that determine the score.
Yeah, I think we should. I think there's a good suggestion on incorporating that into the assessment. Because it will, yeah, you're right. I mean, it will matter. We'll have to find a way to incorporate that. But yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good advice. A good suggestion.
I do like the multiplier too. It does give a bigger range of, rather than adding, right? Like, oh, if you add it, it's like, oh, well, it doesn't look that bad. But it's like,
Yeah.
well, actually, it's really bad.
It's bad, yeah. Yeah.
So I do like that better. I'm still having trouble picturing how this is going to lay out.
Me too. Yeah, I'm trying to think of how we can make it look and work and make it easy to understand. Easy to use also is what I'm more concerned with. I don't want to have this huge formula and flow charts and all these things because it makes it tough for people.
I'll tell you how they do it in pharma. It's like a worksheet. It's a worksheet. It makes you feel a little bit like you're in school. When I first did it, I was a little bit like, well, this is juvenile, but it was perfect because it asked you questions and then you had think of it like almost like those quizzes they used to put in teen magazines back in the 90s. Like you would assign everything, you go through and it would just ask you each question and you assign a number, and then on the next page was all the and you add that up, and then you go to the matrices and you go in. But it was like a one sheet sort of that just walked you through all of the questions as you went.
Yeah, in our lab, we sort of use this for business continuity modeling. So some of the considerations that we have in there is the time that it takes for that particular service to be back. So that I was just using that experience, and especially when we're talking about a risk matrix, then the criticality of the functions comes in, and the likelihood of in the context of AI, what is the likelihood of a piece of software using AI or an individual using AI, or how it's incorporated into the automated features that we are now all starting to use. So it seemed to correlate with the impact and likelihood concept.
And Serjeet, your business continuity thing that we've discussed in previous, that's exactly what came to mind when I was discussing, when we were talking about this previously, and my input that I provided for this meeting was kind of based on that. So, yeah.
I think it's great. I think that's the right approach, right mentality for this, so it works. And I like the worksheet idea, Rachel, that you mentioned. Is what I envisioned when we first started talking about this, of having just a bunch of questions, like you're right, like those magazine quizzes, and just rate everything and then add it up with a separate matrix and make it easy. Again, I just want it to be easy. If it's not easy, people won't use it. So I think something like that would be very helpful. Should we instead then try to come up with those questions for the next meeting, or maybe refine the scoring categories and then come up with the questions?
I think having the questions come in as a homework assignment, sorry everyone, is a good one. Just because that way we have a big list of questions that we can go through one at a time, and like, what is this one? Like, does this make sense? Can we refine this? We are going to have a lot of duplicative effort there.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, that's kind of how the way that this works is you need time to think about it, but we don't really have time in the committee meetings to sit and work through all those. Otherwise, we'll be here forever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We could do that, but we'd need the meetings way more frequently, and I don't know if everyone has that time that they can afford that way.
Yeah. If you guys don't mind doing homework, I think that'd be the best way, easiest way.
But like some of them that we all have already mentioned, like how long is if it goes bad, how long would the lab take to recover from it, right? That's like an easier one. So we can go through some of them here and then have more of them that we come in later. I think we probably want to establish the pillars.
Yeah.
The pillars of each. How does this question relate to each of those pillars? And then that way we can tie it back to like a likelihood kind of score. Or maybe we ask each question and have it fill out like each of the pillars. 4 boxes. Each question you answer 4 things. And then you pass it along, and then that sums it up at the end. I don't know. Just brainstorming. But
yeah, I think I'm trying to think of how we can incorporate each of the pillars. So I guess to make sure that we're on the same page with the pillars that we had were the auditability, data sovereignty, reproducibility, and then the retention, or like the ethics and retention and all that aspect. Is that still good for people? I think those are the 4 that I came up with. I don't know if people had better ideas or different ideas.
You said auditability, data retention, data sovereignty, and reproducibility.
Yeah. Let me see
Okay,
if I can
that's what I
bring
had
up.
in my notes. I didn't. Okay.
Sorry, let me bring up my page. See if I have it here handy. Yeah, but those are the 4 pillars that I had come up with. I don't know if they're good or not good, or if you had other better ideas. Anything that maybe are more critical. So I'm trying to bring up the other document. I have too many things open.
part of it is I can't spell sovereignty, which I feel like is just me today. But I change it to data security.
Okay.
So how secure is the data? So how auditable it is, right? How easy is it to find out if it's correct? How secure is it? Like how much access is given or taken away? How reproducible is it? Like, could you do the same thing again? Which kind of is auditability, but also, right? It's a little bit. Those are a little tied together. And then retention, like how easy is it to save?
Yeah.
So if your AI model is not easy to save, high score, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think we can assign each question, to the pillars. Yeah.
Could I please ask a question about the AI model and saving the information? What are we looking at in terms of, I mean, assuming that the AI models are going to be training themselves as more information goes in. So in terms of saving the information, I mean, what would we be looking at as an expectation?
So that's a good question. I think it's very difficult, and that's something that John Franco mentioned would also be an issue in his submission. It's not practical. I don't think it's practical to save a model, especially if it's like a LLM, a publicly held LLM that you just can't. It's not possible to download it and save it, right? It's something that we'd have to kind of establish a guideline. I think that's one of the things that we'd have to do is up front, or at least at some point in this document, we should say what are the expectations for data retention and for record retention, and how regeneratable this data is going to be, right? For T&I, everything has to be able to be made again from the raw data. So if you have the raw data, you can integrate it again, assess the peak against the calibration curve again, do all that stuff. But for this type of model, you can't. It's just not feasible. So I think that's something that this group would have to come up with as a minimum kind of record retention. I don't know the answer. I would say, save as much as possible, but again, we just, it's tough. I think we have to set something up.
So
I
does
don't have a
that
good
go
answer.
into the score then, right? How easy is your AI model? Maybe not retention. Retention is not the level of data isn't the right category. Retention of data would be auditability, right? So retention of your data model. So
Yeah.
how easy is it for you to back up your model? If you're using something like ChatGPT that's all cloud hosted that you have no control over whatsoever, that gets a really high score for retention because
Mhm.
you don't have it. You can't
Yeah.
keep it, sort
Yeah.
of.
And this is where the difference between the tool and the procedure, you define that kind of thing in the procedure, in the framework. You define what what's your company's data retention policy, and reproducibility and things like that. That's where my experience with the vague things in T&I are concerned, is you define it in a document somewhere as it applies to your company or your lab or what have you.
Yeah, I think we can incorporate some of that kind of language where, yeah, T&I says you should have a procedure for this to make sure that it's, something that you can follow. But in this case, we'd also need to have something where we'd have to make it so that you could score it, I guess, appropriately, so that even though you do have a way of recording the model version or whatever you're using, to be able to say, hey, has higher risk because that model changes. The model's constantly being trained, and it may give different output for different, prompts, for example, in, I don't know, like a Gen AI type situation. Unless you can do things, and this is again something we'd have to define, unless you can turn the temperature down to 0. Like if you can put the temperature at absolute 0 and have it not make iterations for every prompt, then that risk level goes down, even though it potentially could be an open model that you don't have access to. But because you can control that temperature, maybe we can give it a level that's a little bit less risky. But so I think it's both. I think we'd have to we can incorporate something about, you have to have language about keeping it or retaining the model or documenting the model or whatever that is, but also put it into the framework for the assessment to say, hey, look, if you can't do this reliably, you need to give it a high risk score, kind of thing. And I think that would also essentially serve to filter out the stuff that you can't do, right? If it's something that is absolutely non-retainable, non-trainable, or temperature selectable or whatever it is, you have to give it a high risk score, and it falls into that 5th tier of don't do it, and it kind of sorts itself out.
I think we discussed this during our last meeting, that any activities associated with generating or editing generating data or editing critical information, it kind of falls, like you say, in the high risk. Therefore, it would also come under the category, get a high score and go under the category of, like, is AI used for that? Is it allowed or is it prohibited? Most likely prohibited, right? And in terms of, I think during the last meeting, we also had discussions about, version control. As much as it can be followed up with, I think with the rate at which it's growing, it's going to be too difficult to follow up with version controls for AI. So again, the risk, always fall in the high risk category, even for reproducibility. So those items have to be under, high risk or critical, however we define the name for it, and therefore it has to be prohibited and restricted, and would fall under probably get the highest score and do not do it category.
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. I think that's the way that makes it the easiest to implement and follow, and also makes it easier for us as we work this document out, instead of trying to think of every potential situation, which we can't, and we don't know what the future holds. Like you said, this is very fluid, so it changes very quickly. So if we can, just build that framework to catch those things, it'd be way easier. So I think that's the right approach. So in terms of the pillars, let me see if I could find my document. Sorry, I was looking for it. And
Did you want me to share my screen? I have it on.
oh, do you have it? Yes, if you could, that would be great. Sorry, I have just too many things open here.
Yeah, you and me both. Okay, I made you co-host, so I think you should be able to share now. I hope. Oh, Augustine, you might need to stop sharing.
I'll stop sharing, yeah. Okay.
Are you able to see it?
Yeah.
So the 4 pillars was what you were asking for, right?
Yeah. So I have my pillars were the same. Yeah. Different order. Same. Okay, good.
I just condensed record retention and ethical use into one. I think you mentioned just record retention. I just combined because last meeting we discussed that ethics should also
ethical,
be in there. Yeah, so that's the only difference. Probably a little bit of the language of how I'm defining it. And we can update data sovereignty to data integrity, or I heard somebody else use a different term for that. So that can be modified too.
Yeah, I think to me, these are the pillars that I thought would be critical. So I think auditability and reproducibility for sure non-negotiable. Data sovereignty, I think, to me is important, but I don't know how important it would be to the rest of you. That would be, where we're not using our data to train models that other people use. Kind of goes with confidentiality. Is that important to folks? Or is that just me?
I think that goes into like a scoring category, right? And then that's where we'd have to look at the standard language to say these things, right?
Mhm.
Here's TNI volume, whatever, blah, 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 section. Like, this is a piece of data you can't give out. So if you're using that here, it's automatically highest tier, right?
Mhm.
But like, you'd want to have at least an idea of where the data goes, so that way you can give it a score, right? And like, what kind of data am I giving it? If I'm giving it sensitive data that's got like people's social security numbers in there, probably can't do that, because highly sensitive data can't go into the AI model, regardless of what model you're using or where it's hosted, that kind of thing. So I think it's good to have as a score. It might be one of those, like, this is a question on a worksheet, not necessarily going with every specific activity, right? So and I guess maybe there's a clarification for Rachel, who's done some of these worksheets and has some experience. Is the worksheet like per activity? Like I want to use AI and find out what kind of.
I don't know if it's just me, but you guys are.
I was just about to say that. I don't know if
I
it's
think we
mine,
lost your internet a little bit.
Yeah, I just got a low internet connectivity warning thing here too. So everyone just kind of jumped around and shifted quite a bit. Okay. I'll repeat. So the question was more for the worksheet. Is it filled out per activity, or is it filled out as like a once kind of general category question?
It was more of a so if you're bringing something in,
Per.
you filled it out per, and then that was part of your documentation that you did the thing, and then that just got filed.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the way we should be judging this, is making it per activity. If you bring something new, do the worksheet.
And once you get used to it, it takes about 5 minutes,
Yeah.
you know, and then you know whatever your next steps are.
Yeah.
And most
if
of
we
them
make-
are low.
Yeah. I think people in general will know, it's like, hey, I probably shouldn't be using this. So it's not going to be questionable. And if we make it easy to use, it should be, pretty straightforward. Cool. So I guess the for the pillars, are we good with these 4 kind of basic pillars to judge the questions on? Okay.
I am, and if we're making a worksheet or something, then it can. If we come up with others later, we can just add it.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm thinking the questions should at least address these 4 minimum. All the questions on the worksheet should address at least these 4 minimum criteria.
The one that that I don't know if it's data sovereignty covers it, I think. But I would like to put also like cybersecurity or something in with data sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
We had discussed. I don't remember what the outcome is. I guess my notes aren't clear, but we had actually brought up the ethics and the cybersecurity part last meeting, and the cybersecurity, I think, was linked into the data security sovereignty.
Yeah, I think that's what we talked about, that we would incorporate that sovereignty in with cybersecurity and data security. So maybe we can change that category to data security. Citizen sovereignty is hard to spell. I think, I don't know. It looks weird. I just wrote it and it looks weird when I typed it too. I don't know. Let's change it to data security, makes it easier.
I have a quick question.
Okay, so I'm seeing we have these 4 as like categories. These are the sorry, maybe it's me. I was thinking as these are the subheadings. So like the worksheet, you'd have a whole heading, auditability, and you have a couple of questions, or however many questions we think we need, and then security, you'd have a couple questions. Reproducibility, data retention, you'd have a couple questions. So you'd have like each section would have questions, and the more sections that we think are more important are going to have more questions because we think it's more, right. So maybe they're kind of weighted pillars, right? Where like auditability's got like 5 questions, and each one of those you're rating 1 to 5. It's leaning towards auditability versus sovereign data security. Maybe has 2 questions, right?
Yeah, I think we can weight them to be the ones that are more important, obviously count for more. So yeah.
Go ahead, Suji. Sorry I cut you off there.
Oh, no worries. I was just trying to understand the distinction between auditability and record retention. There's a lot of overlap in those areas.
Yeah.
So I was just curious if, we will be refining that later on, or maybe recognizing that, the overlap is going to exist amongst all these pillars regardless, because that's how lab operations usually are linked with one another. But sometimes there is more linkage in one area than the other. So I think in the examples moving forward, you probably need to clearly define where where those fall under, or where their greater overlap is, or where if it's 60% in one area, then put it there instead of in the other category. And then especially on the record retention side, that's where I think our challenge is going to exist with AI models continually changing and what versions you control and what you retain.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's for sure going to be overlap between audibility and record retention. We likely could condense them into one category, but I kind of like it as two, so that we can have it be more visible, I think, to the users as they kind of answer the questions. The auditability, I feel like we maybe can add like a reproducibility component. Say, does it generate the same result every time? And can you show that it's done every time? Because you're obviously not going to be able to really audit an AI process that goes through some, model that is just impossible to audit. And that would be separate from the record retention, where you're going to keep the proof of what you did. That, let's say you did run it 5 times and it gave the answer 5 times for part of your validation. Maybe that would be a separate category. I don't know. I like the idea of keeping them separate, but I agree there's going to be a lot of overlap in those. So we can condense them. If the questions come back kind of in both categories, we'll just condense them then.
Yeah, I would say okay to keep it as is for now, but just keep in
Evaluate,
mind that
yeah.
keep in mind that it might need some revision, or maybe some update in the language, or maybe another category if that's what it seems to direct. And so just being open in terms of these pillars, because it may turn into more than 4 in future.
Yeah. I think that'd be something
also,
that we can.
sorry,
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I also agree with that, because I was thinking of this as the, first initial draft. And as we get used to it more and more, I think we can narrow down, because even when I was doing it, I was thinking, oh, auditability looks like it covers the entire gamut of things, right?
Yeah.
Everything kind of fits into auditability. Even what the 4 pillars mentioned, all the rest of the 3 will fit under that category. So as we get used to it and as we discuss more, I think we'll have a much clearer idea. And yes, I think we are definitely open to kind of, updating as we go.
That's great. So
Yeah.
the flexibility is going to be definitely a welcome option to have.
Yeah, I think once we get all the questions in, we can start working through them and categorizing them. And then I think hopefully the tiers will kind of make themselves apparent at that point, once we have all that. I think for next steps, if we're pretty okay on the tiers, again, the pillars, we will, again, they'll coalesce when we get the questions. Maybe we can assign some homework and kind of get those questions rolling. What do you guys think?
So I'm just trying to recap and make sure we're all on the same page here. So what we're thinking is using, well, for one, everything that you have here, Augustine, even if you drop it into one huge Word document, I can remediate it so that way we can post it online.
Perfect.
Along with the recording, and say, hey, everyone who's interested, here's all this stuff that we were talking about, and you can look at it. And then I'll put a little blurb too of here's everyone's homework assignment. Come up with a list of questions that we want to include on a worksheet that you would do per AI use activity. So be that I want to use AI to spell check for me and rewrite emails to that the technical manager sends, to I want to use AI to review chromatographs, say. And you'd fill out the same worksheet for both activities and give you a score, and then that score would put it in a tier, and those tiers would have minimum things that the lab has to do. So the lab has to Like for the spell check one, the lab wouldn't need to record what data model they're using because, I mean, other than like this is the company that we use, because like what version do they use? Doesn't matter.
No.
We don't really care. Versus if they're using it to review data, that would need what data model did it use, what data training did it get, like is the data all from your lab or from not your lab? So there'd be two things. One is the putting it in the bucket, and that's the worksheet, and that's what we want the questions for.
Mm-hmm.
The next is what do we have to do once we know what bucket it's in? And we haven't discussed that bit yet.
Should we discuss that once we get the questions, or should we bring that up now and try to bring that as homework as well?
I'll leave that up to you all. How much homework do you guys want to do? The next meeting is August.
I think it's scheduled for 19th. I'm
19th?
actually out of town on that week.
Okay.
So we might either we could do it without me or reschedule it for a different day.
I won't be available on August 19th either.
Okay. Sounds like
I'll
we
be
got to move
traveling.
it. Because we need three of the subcommittee members, so that'd be Rachel, Saguna, and John Franco, all have to be available on the 19th or remove it.
I'm available.
Wow, we're not going to get the answer to that. John Franco's unfortunately
Oh, yeah.
today. But it sounds more likely than not that we'll have to move. So
I'll be available as well.
okay.
Going back to Chris's question, I think it's better to have the questions first. I think the whole spectrum of questions is going to give us a better understanding, and then we'll go to the next step.
Yeah, I think these things I think will kind of elucidate themselves as we have the questions, and the validation and the criteria and all that stuff I think will be easier to figure out once we have a stepping stone for that.
I agree. One step at a time.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we can do that. For the homework would just be the questions. If you can put together as many, I think as many questions as you can would be great. It doesn't have to be, even super fleshed out. Like if it's an idea, like I don't know how to phrase this, but this is kind of the idea. We can discuss that and work it out, and do it that way. And I can compile them if you want to send them my way. I can compile them.
Yeah, guys, when you're out of town for?
Sorry?
When are you out of town for? Just for
I'm on vacation. I'm going to Norway.
Ooh,
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. We did a road trip in Norway. So I'll have internet. I'll be available, but it's like a 9 or 10 hour.
You don't need to do this when you're in Norway. I think this can wait. Or we can have Saguna or Rachel. You can be point for compiling all the questions.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, we'll do
Thank
that.
you.
So everyone email Saguna all your questions, homework assignment. August 19th is the meeting date. I'd love it if we could post the questions before the meeting. But that would be...
I'll get you my questions probably by the end of the week of the 10th. I'm leaving that week, so I'm going to do it before I leave. So I'll get you my questions probably like the 10th, 11th, 12th, something like that.
And to clarify too, August 19th, I'm actually available if it's like first thing in the morning, but if it's going to be at noon or 10 or something like that.
Yeah, it'll be at 10.
Okay, then yeah, that would be.
We can try to shift it earlier if that works better for folks. Either way, I'll have to renotice it, but I was going to do that anyway because of get more participation, show the thing again. But I'd need to renotice it on the 10th of August. So I'll send out a little poll to I guess you, James, Rachel, Saguna. We know Augustine won't be there, and then John Franco, and we'll see. We'll make sure that we have a quorum. Gotta have 3 people, and then if we need to move it earlier, we can move it earlier. It'd be like what, 8 to 10 for you, James? Keep it about 2 hours.
Yeah, yeah. That's I gotta hit the road about 11.
Okay,
So
so
yeah,
8:30,
10 would-
10:30 then.
Yeah, that would. that
Yeah.
would work.
Okay. So questions would be nice to get before August 10th. What are the dates again? Yeah, questions would be nice before. Let's do August 12th. That'd be a week before. Right, that gives me plenty of time to hopefully get it on the website. And then folks time to look at them before we meet. And then 19th will probably move the time up depending on subcommittee members' availability. And that needs to happen before the 10th. So, okay. 2, 8, 12.
If it turns out we can't get a quorum on the 19th, what would the follow-up be?
It'll either be move the meeting to later or cancel it and have it the 3 weeks after that,
All right,
which is on
that's fine.
the September 9th.
Okay. My point was I'll be gone that following week also.
Got it. Okay.
As
All right. I'll send a
long as
poll.
it's not going to be that following week, then I'm
I'll send a poll out then, and we'll make sure we get that square and we have a quorum before the 19th then. And that'll get renoticed. So I think if you're already registered for the meeting, I think you'll get an email for it. I don't know. Not 100% sure how that's going to work with Zoom. I don't use Zoom enough to know how it does the registration, but I'll be sending an announcement out, and I'll have everyone's email list of people who are registered, so I'll be able to send it out directly to those folks too.
Cool.
A meeting for me, any day, anytime before 10 is going to be really hard because most of the days we are probably have standing meetings
Yeah,
because of our new lab plan. So
yeah,
that's taking up
that's
a
what the
lot of.
polls for. Yeah, we want to make sure you can meet there too, because you're going to be point on questions, so it'll be at your discretion, and James may not be able to make it, and that would be okay. It's okay to miss one. You'll still got all the materials. We'll still circle back. There's still plenty of times to discuss all these.
Cool.
I don't think
and I'll try to make it too. If I can make it, I think it's gonna be 7 p.m. for the meeting. So if I can make it, I'll make it.
All right, I'll include you in the poll. But...
Yeah, just in case. I'll do my best.
Okay. All right. Do we want to discuss anything tier related, or are we kind of happy with the low tier, no documentation, minimal documentation, or I guess 0 is minimal documentation. Tier 1 is like some. Tier 2, medium. Oh no, Saguna, you mentioned let's not do numbers for those. So
Yeah, I think
no
we'll
impact.
categorize them. Yeah.
Low impact, medium impact, high impact, and then prohibited / unlikely.
Yeah.
Because there might be an exception to that,
And
depending
I'll put
on what the
together.
worksheet looks like.
I'll put together some language about that. I'll compile all the notes from everybody and put together some language on the framework that I think maybe, or the tiers that make sense, and so you guys think, do it that way.
And you'll send that out?
I'll send it out, yeah. And I'll put together some notes from this meeting. I have my AI note taker.
Ooh.
It says it's taking notes, so we'll see how good it is at taking notes in this meeting.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
So which category of risk would it fit in?
Hopefully the lowest one because it's not documented.
Yeah. As we go, we are training our own mind for that.
Yeah, and it's good. It's good to start thinking about it that way. So yeah, it's good.
All right. With that, then, do we want to call it as an earlier meeting?
I think so. I think we'll give everybody a little time back in their day, and I'll get this stuff compiled and sent out this afternoon probably.
Okay. It might be a while for this meeting recording to get posted again.
No worries.
Yeah, they're all. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's not.
Yeah, no worries.
So, and then as soon as you get that compiled, send it to me so I can get that on the website too.
Awesome. Will do.
Okay. Well, great.
Cool.
The next one is still tentatively August 19th. That is subject to change either via time slot or via week. And then we'll keep the rest of the schedule the same.
Cool. Yeah, that works.
Yeah. Okay,
Awesome.
cool.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everybody for all the contributions. And thank you for everybody sending stuff and I appreciate all the help. So it's awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.